project started in 12 countries in 1999, and it has expanded to over 30 countries. As at the last round, that is round 6 in 2014, we were able to cover about 37 African countries. And in this current round, we are trying as much as possible to cover not less than 34 African countries. Surveys have been completed in almost about 20 countries already. So in other countries, it is still ongoing. The goal of Afrobarometer is to give the public a voice in policy making by providing high-quality data to policymakers, policy advocates, civil society organizations, academics, news media, donors, and investors, and the ordinary citizens. In each of the countries where we run the Afrobarometer survey, we have a national partner or an institution that does the data collection for us. So in all the 37 countries, we have specific institutions that are responsible for the data collection and then the dissemination of the findings. And in Ghana, it is CDD Ghana that does the data collection for Afrobarometer. So looking at the Africa map over here, the only countries where we are yet to cover are the countries shaded gray. But all the other countries that have other colors, Afrobarometer is working in those countries. The colors represents the number of surveys that we've been able to do in those countries. So if you look at those having orange, they have been able to do 7 rounds of Afrobarometer, which means they were the first countries that started Afrobarometer. So we are left with just a few, if you look at the Africa map, just a few to cover the entire continent. And we believe, by God's grace, we'll get there some time to come. Because the idea behind Afrobarometer project is to get the data on governance issues for the entire African continent so that it will help in initiating policies that will enhance development on the continent. What is the methodology? We normally use a nationally representative sample of adult citizens. Adult citizens means those who are 18 years and above. And we select the respondents randomly. We have series of processes or protocols that we follow in selecting the respondent. The sample is also distributed across regions and then the urban-rural enclaves according to their proportion in the national distribution of the adult population. So if you take the adult population of Ghana and you have maybe 5% of the adult population residing in Upper West, we make sure that our survey sample also, we will have 5% of the respondents coming from Upper West so that we have that national representation. We also use face-to-face interviews in the language of the respondents' choice. So what we do is we translate the Afrobarometer questionnaire into 5 major languages. We translate into Twi, Ga, Ewe, Dagari, and Dagbani. So in the field, alongside the English instrument, the interviewer will decide which language they want the interview to be conducted in. We also use a standard questionnaire over time. So basically, the kind of questionnaire we are using in Ghana is the same as the questionnaire being used in all the other over 30 countries that we have. But then there is the opportunity for each country to put in some few questions that are basically country-specific questions. And these country-specific questions are based on each political, economic environment during the time of the survey that they want scientific information on. So in Ghana, what we did this year round is what we are about to share with you, because we realized during the time of the survey, these are the issues. Party vigilantism, Galamsey issues, and the rest were more or less dominating the media discussions. So we decided, let us go out there to find out what the citizens are also thinking about these issues. So for what we are sharing today is basically more on the country-specific questions. The standard size of Afrobarometer survey sample is either 1,200 or 2,400. In Ghana, we use 2,400. And a sample size of this nature, given the 95% confidence level, will have a margin of error of plus or minus 2%. That simply means that whatever percentage we present over here, we are saying when you do a sample, 100 types of sample, following the same procedure, in 95% of the sample, you will get your percentage falling within, maybe if the percentage for a particular issue is about 20, and we are saying we have a margin of error plus or minus 2%, it simply means that the range will be 20 minus 2 and 20 plus 2. So when you do the same sample 100 times, the likelihood is that 95% of those samples, or 95 of those samples, will have percentages on that same issue falling within that range. It's only 5 of the samples that their percentages will fall outside. And so there is a high level of confidence in the figures that we are presenting today. The field work for Afrobarometer round 7 in Ghana was conducted in September 9 to 25, 2017. And as I said, we used a sample size of 2,400 respondents. And these respondents were located in 300 enumeration areas. The enumeration areas are basically the lowest sampling unit within the Ghana Statistical Service population framework. And these years are also spread across, we have these respondents spread across 293 towns within the 300 years, and these towns are also located in about 171 of the districts in all the 10 regions. So that is the spread of the Afrobarometer survey, and that is the map of the Afrobarometer survey respondents, where they are coming from, compared to the distribution of the adult population of Ghana. The map on your left side is the one that shows the distribution of the adult population in Ghana. And then the map on your right side is that for the Afrobarometer sample. For each and every dot on the Afrobarometer map that you see, it represents 8 respondents. It represents 8 respondents. So if you look, for instance, at Greater Accra, where we have the population to be so dense, and you compare it to that of the Afrobarometer, you can also see that the Afrobarometer one is also so dense because we have more population in Greater Accra, so our sample also reflects that. And as I said, 1 dot on the Afrobarometer map represents 8 individuals. So that is how widespread the Afrobarometer survey is. Now let's look at the demographics. As I said, the sample is more or less nationally representative. When we look at the first column in terms of the region, the national, the adult population distribution is shown over there. When you compare it to the blue-colored one, which is the weighted adult population distribution of our sample, you can see they are almost close. Western region 10.1, 9.5, when you round them off 10%. In the national adult population distribution, the urban is 54.4, rural 45.6, and then in our sample too, it is the same. In terms of gender, we normally do gender alternation so that when we are doing analysis of the data, we can have enough of both sexes in the data to be able to do that kind of analysis. So as I said, we practice gender alternation in the field, which means if I'm an interviewer and the first respondent I select for my interview randomly is a male, I ensure that the next respondent will be a female, and it continues from the start of the survey to the end. So at the end of the day, the 2,400 sample size that we have, 1,200 are males and 1,200 are females. Then in terms of education, those that we spoke with, these are their academic background. 15.9% no formal education, 26.4 primary education, 43.5 secondary, and then 13.9 post-secondary. In terms of their religious faith, 78.8 Christians, 15.4 Muslims, then 2.3 traditionalists, and then 3.3 have no religion. And then the age distribution is also shown over there. But what I want us to focus our attention on is that we find out that about 55.5 are within the youth range, 18 to 35 years, those that we spoke with. Now let's go quickly to the results. What are the opinions of citizens and their attitudes also towards emigration? These are the key findings from that issue. Most Ghanaians think it is difficult for people in West Africa to cross international borders within the sub-region to work or trade in other countries. About 1/3 of Ghanaians have lived in other countries for more than 3 months. And about 1/3 of Ghanaians declared an intention to emigrate within a year or two, while about 1 in 10 Ghanaians are currently planning to emigrate. The ease or difficulty in traveling within the West African sub-region. As I said, about 2/3 of Ghanaians, 66% say it is very difficult or difficult for West Africans to cross international borders within the sub-region, compared to 63% in 2014. 2014, that's Francis, when we asked the same question, 63% said that. So in terms of percentages, there is no significant change. Only 17% think it is very easy or easy to do so, as compared to 19% in 2014. Then 29% of Ghanaians say they or someone in their household has gone to live in another country for more than 3 months. Close to 1/3, 28% of Ghanaians say they have been considering emigrating a lot or somewhat. Close to 1/3, 28% are thinking of emigrating next year or two, even though they are yet to start preparations. Almost 1/10, that is 8%, are currently preparing to emigrate. And actually, these people are the ones who said they've even started working on visa and other things. So these are the real people who, within the shortest possible time, they may want to leave the shores of Ghana. However, close to 2/3, 63%, are not making such plans. So these are the charts. Those who have lived outside, 29% yes. Those considering to emigrate, 71% not at all, 28% a lot. Then how much preparation is made, 63% not making it. Then the preferred destination of prospective immigrants. Only 11% of Ghanaians who want to emigrate will want to live in other African countries. Most prospective immigrants will want to live outside Africa, with North America 39% and Europe 31% being the most preferred destination. So virtually it's not about leaving Ghana, but even leaving the entire continent. That is what they want to do. Most Ghanaians will want to emigrate for economic reasons. Those who want to do so to find work, 53%. Those who want to do so just to escape economic hardship, 19%. And those who are doing so for business prospects, 8%. Before I go into the findings, I just want to present a little background information so that we get a kind of context within which the respondent provided the information. And this context basically is issues that were in the news media or discussion programs during the time we were in the field and before we went to the field. So basically what I'm presenting on issues on party vigilantism and board justice in the media covers the period July to September when we were in the field. We will look at what was happening before then, and then during the time we were really gathering the data, what was also happening, because we believe some of these issues may have informed the kind of information that people provided in terms of the survey. So during that period, the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, together with like-minded civil society organizations, advocated for total disbandment of identified political party vigilante groups because they are gaining notoriety in the country's political environment. Members of the invisible forces also threatened to visit mayhem on government officials for what they perceive as failure on their part to offer them promised jobs. Then the case of the 13 members of the Delta Force Vigilante Group who were charged for assaulting the Ashanti Regional Security Liaison Officer was adjourned. Also, we had a United States ambassador to Ghana calling on government to take concrete steps to rein in vigilante groups during his address at the inauguration of the African Center on Law and Ethics at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. Also, a military officer with the 5th Infantry Battalion, Burma Camp, who was on detachment duties to help curb illegal mining of galamsey, was lynched on suspicion of being an armed robber at Denshirabuasi in the Upper Denshira West district of the Central Region. An Accra Magistrate Court also discharged the 13 out of the 32 suspects arrested and charged with murder for their involvement in the lynching. So these are some of the issues that were out there in the media during the time we were doing the survey. So what are the key findings? Most Ghanaians believe it is wrong and punishable for party vigilante groups to attack government appointees whose appointment they disagree with, and to lock up government offices for unfulfilled expectation of employment, or to destroy state properties. So for all these three issues, we had majority of Ghanaians saying it is wrong and punishable for these groups to engage in such activities. Most citizens approve of government prosecuting and punishing political party vigilantes without favor. A small majority of Ghanaians rated positively government efforts in fighting political party vigilantism. A majority of Ghanaians believe only the police should deal with suspected criminals. So attacks on government appointees by political party vigilante groups. An overwhelming majority of Ghanaians, 88%, consider it wrong and punishable for political party vigilante groups to attack government appointees whose appointment they disagree with. A large majority also believe, that is 87%, it is wrong and punishable for political vigilante groups whose employment expectations have not been met after election victory to lock up government offices. And then we have 91% also saying it is wrong and punishable for political party vigilante groups to take over and destroy state properties such as offices, toll booths, public toilets, car parks, etc. So who among Ghanaians condemn activities of political party vigilante groups? We found that more Ghanaians with a minimum, that is at least primary education, that is from 88 to 89%, condemn these three acts compared to their counterparts with no formal education. So even with just primary education, people are able to see through and know that these acts are wrong. The acts were condemned by Ghanaians across the 10 regions. The Upper West, however, showed the lowest rate of disapproval, that is 66 to 67%, compared to the other regions that had disapproval rates of 73 to 98%. Almost about equal percentages of the survey demographics, including affiliates of various political parties and citizens with varied voter preferences in 2016 presidential election, condemn it. So even when you look at the condemnation across political party affiliation, it is quite total. You look at it in terms of who they voted for. Even in the 2016 election, we see the same situation. There was a total condemnation of these three acts. So, punishment of political party vigilante groups. Majority of Ghanaians strongly approve of government prosecuting and punishing members of political party vigilante groups that engage in acts of lawlessness irrespective of their party affiliation. And the percentages demanding prosecution of political party vigilante groups for crimes to some extent rises with the level of education. So you see the no education 80, primary 88, secondary 91, post-secondary 89. So it increases as people become a bit more enlightened. 2/3 or more of Ghanaians in all regions, that is 69 to 96%, want government to prosecute and punish political party vigilante groups for crimes committed. And as I said, only in Upper West region that we found the percentage to be a bit lower, that is 69%. Ghanaian opinion that government prosecutes and punish political party vigilante groups for crimes committed is not influenced in any remarkable way by other demographics such as party affiliation or voter preference, meaning whether I belong to party A or party B, I believe it is wrong. Somebody also belonging to a different party hold the same perception. So party affiliation has no influence, and who they voted for in 2016 election also had no influence. So how well is government handling illegal activities of political party vigilante groups? We found just a small majority of Ghanaians, 53%, thinking the government has done very or fairly well in handling the criminal activities of political party vigilante groups. But we also found that a third, a little over a third, that is 34%, believe the government has done very badly or fairly badly in handling the issue. So the evaluation of government's fight against political party vigilantism by region. When we look at the regions, we realize relatively more respondents negatively rated government's effort in fighting vigilante groups. So in these regions, we find more thinking the government has failed. But then in the other regions, the other 6 regions, the ratings were quite favorable. More Ghanaians with at least primary education rated government efforts positively compared to those with no formal education. In relative terms, more NPP affiliates, that is 66%, and voters in 2016 elections, 64%, than those of the NDC. For affiliates, 35%, voters, 39%, and other smaller opposition parties, 50 and 59%, rated government efforts positively. So the rating appears to have some kind of political undertone as well. So those who belong to the ruling party tend to rate the government more in terms of its performance, and those from the opposition side, the ratings tend to be a bit lower. Urban-rural resident, gender, age, employment, unemployment status had no influence in the positive assessment scores. Then combating crime, that is reliance on police versus instant justice. We had 82%, including 68%, who strongly agree, saying citizens should always rely solely on the police in dealing with criminals. However, we had about 15% thinking sometimes it is acceptable for citizens to administer instant justice to suspected criminals. And so even though we are having majority saying it is wrong, we also have about 15% who, when they get a chance, will do it. So it simply means that all of us over here, we are not safe. We may not know when we will fall into the hands of those 15%. Over 1/2 of citizens in all regions across the country believe the police alone should deal with criminals. Support level for reliance on police increases with level of education. So those with no education, the support level is 75, primary it moves to 83, secondary 85, and tertiary 89. Support for police to deal with criminals cuts across all other demographics such as urban, rural, gender, age, party affiliation, and employment, unemployment status. Now we move on to issues concerning illegal small-scale mining or galamsey. And once again, before we go into that, a bit of a background. Government earlier in the year classified small-scale illegal mining as a major challenge to the country and placed a ban on it. Through the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, a 21-day ultimatum was also issued to all illegal miners to cease their operations and hand over their equipment. The Vice President was also heard announcing the suspension of issuance of license for small-scale mining. During that same period, some Ghanaians and foreigners in the illegal mining business were arrested by the 400-member military and police task force that was set up by the minister. That is the Operation Vanguard. And also, among those who were arrested was the popular Chinese woman, the Galamsey Queen. The state attorneys for the 3rd time also brought fresh charges against the Galamsey Queen, that Chinese woman, and 5 other Chinese nationals for their involvement in Galamsey activities. We also had media news reports indicating that the Operation Vanguard, that is the 400-member military and police task force commissioned to fight illegal mining in various parts of the country, is making positive impacts. Some of our water bodies regaining their shape and status again because of the fight against galamsey. So these are some of the issues that were in the media during the time we were also collecting the data. So what are the key findings? Majority of Ghanaians say the country's legislation outlaws illegal small-scale mining, and so it should be so and nobody should engage in it. So a large majority also positively evaluated government's effort in fighting illegal small-scale mining. A large majority also support government provision of alternative livelihood for illegal small-scale miners. So what are the details? 3/4 of Ghanaians say people should not engage in illegal small-scale mining for any reason. But we have 21% who, however, think citizens should be able to eke out a living through galamsey, even though it is illegal. So that also tells you that there are some kind of economic or livelihood undertones over there. How well is government fighting illegal small-scale mining? A large majority, 82%, say the government is doing very or fairly well in its effort to stamp out illegal small-scale mining. Just 1 in 8, that is 13%, disapprove of government's performance in fighting galamsey. Ghanaians also support the government's intention to provide alternative livelihood for illegal small-scale miners who are affected by the ban, but 15% disagree or disapprove with this. Do we find demographics influencing dislike for illegal mining? Citizens with at least primary education, affiliates of NPP, and those who voted NPP in 2016 presidential election are more opposed to galamsey than their counterparts with no education who are affiliated or voted for the opposition in 2016. Regions where citizens reside did not show any significant influence on dislike for galamsey, but we found that the 3 northern regions recorded the lowest disapproval rates vis-a-vis the other regions. Citizens with at least primary education belonging to no demographic influence whatsoever was found when we look at alternative livelihood support that the citizens are saying government should provide for those affected by the ban. So it appears that those who believe that there should be some kind of alternative measures put in place for these people cut across all demographics. So what about Ghanaians' perception of corruption? During the period, we found the story about the National Lottery Authority misappropriating about 150,000 cedis when they met the Parliamentary Select Committee on Finance to discuss amendment to the National Lottery Act. And it came out that that money was spent on allowances and the rest. We also found a member of Parliament calling for an independent investigation into that allegation. There was a joint statement from 3 anti-corruption and governance institutions, Ghana Integrity Initiative, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, and then Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, also calling for an independent probe into the allegation. Also, we all remember the problem between A+ and then the 2 deputies being corrupt. We remember the president also calling on the police CID to investigate that allegation. We remember the fallout that came after the discussion between A+ and then the CID, and then the alleged doctored tape and all those things. And then the Public Procurement Authority also established a public procurement and due diligence unit just to ensure that there will be no graft in award of contracts and other things. So these are some of the corruption issues that were in the news media. We also found a civil society pressure group, Occupy Ghana, getting a favorable Supreme Court ruling that ordered the Auditor General to probably surcharge persons found to have misappropriated state funds. And subsequently, the Auditor General announced that there were about 11 people that have been surcharged, and others are still working on others. Then the issue of the SNIT procuring some software that never worked, and then also the issue relating to the 3 electoral commission officials who were accusing each other, and then the Yoko stepping in and ordering them to step aside for investigation. So these are some of the corruption issues that were in the news before we went to the field. The key findings: most Ghanaians perceive some informal leaders, public and private sector officials as corrupt. The perception is worse for officials in the public sector. Most Ghanaians think the that governments over the years have been very swift in prosecuting and punishing corrupt officials belonging to opposition parties. Nevertheless, majority believe the current government performed well in fighting corruption. There is a rise in public confidence in government's effort to combat corruption in 2017 compared to 2014. This is after over a decade of decline. Majority of Ghanaians think government must devote more resources towards investigating and punishing corrupt officials. Most Ghanaians believe ordinary citizens can help fight corruption. However, majority still believe ordinary citizens who report incidents of corruption risk reprisal. Majority of Ghanaians want stiffer punishment for corrupt officials. So these are the findings. Looking at the police, judges and magistrates, we realize that those who said some, most, or all of them are corrupt is ranging from 78% to 92%. And these are all public officials or public institutions. So there is high level of corruption there. And only small majorities, that is 3 to 11%, said none of them is corrupt. Then in the private or informal, private sector or among informal leaders, we see the same situation, but the rates are a bit lower compared to the public officials. And surprisingly, when I did the analysis and found out now the traditional leaders are also hitting the 80s, I started trying to understand the basis of that 80% there. And some of the issues that came to mind is, we all know how the traditional leaders are selling land double, left and right and center and all those things. So these things may have also influenced that decision. We can also even see the religious leaders. They are also rising, 74%. So now people are believing those who have the moral right to even help us out of this wood are themselves engaged in corruption. And I think it's a serious issue. So when we look at it in terms of trend, you realize that between 2014 and 2017, that is round 6 and round 7 survey, we see just marginal reductions or marginal additions in the level of corruption, perceived corruption. But when you compare it across the entire period, that is 2002 to 2017, then we can really see that those who believe some, most, or all of the people in the president's office, there is some kind of increase of about 41%. And it runs through all the public institutions and then private or informal leaders that we see listed over there. So from 2002 to 2017, what we are seeing is that the trend shows the level of perceived corruption over the past year. 1/3 of Ghanaians, 33%, believe corruption increased somewhat or a lot during the past year. A huge drop from 75% recorded in 2014. So in 2014, we found 75% believing the level of corruption has increased, but in 2017, it has dropped to 33%. Similarly, 36% compared to 8% in 2014 think corruption decreased somewhat or a lot during the same period. Another 22% believe the level has remained the same. And in 2014, it was 8% who held that view, while 9% say they don't know. So that is the chart. Sorry, this is the chart on how well governments have fought corruption over the years. We had 61% strongly agreeing or saying they agree that governments have over the years been swift in investigating and punishing corrupt officials who belong to the opposition parties compared to those affiliated to the ruling party. But 16%, however, disagree with this assertion. Nearly 2/3, that's 60%, believe government has performed very well or fairly well. In 2014, it was 25%. About 1/3, 30%, think government has performed very or fairly well, very or fairly badly, sorry. In 2014, it was 71% who believe so. More than half of respondents, that is 63 to 91% in Eastern, Central, Brown-Ahafo, Western, and Ashanti regions, believe government has performed very or fairly well. Respondents in Greater Accra region were nearly equally split in their opinion. That is, 48% believe the government has done very or fairly well, whilst 41% think government has done very or fairly badly. Majority of the respondents, from 44% to 55% in Volta, Northern, Upper West, and Upper East regions, assess government's anti-corruption performance very or fairly badly, or the bar charts showing what percentages are coming from the various regions in terms of the assessment of government performance in fighting corruption. Government performance in fighting corruption, the trend over time shows that for those who believe the government has performed very or fairly well, declined by 3% between 2002 and 2017, but increased by 35% from 2014 to 2017. So that is the red line. Those who believe corruption, government anti-corruption fight has been very or fairly well, in 2002 was 63%, and when you compare it to 2017, it is 60%. So there is just a marginal drop of 3%. But when you look at 2014 to 2017, it moves from 25% to 60%, so an increment of about 35%. And then in contrast, we see the same situation for those who believe government has performed very or fairly badly. Nearly 3/4 of Ghanaians strongly agree that government devotes more resources towards investigating and punishing corrupt officials. Close to 1/5, however, think otherwise. 6 in 10 Ghanaians strongly agree that ordinary people can make a difference in the fight against corruption, as against 53% in 2014. About 1/3 believe otherwise, compared to 36 who think so in 2014. On reporting incidents of corruption, 61% said they risk retaliation, while 35% said they can do so without fear. So what appropriate punishment will citizens want government to mete out to corrupt persons? As punishment for corrupt officials, majority of Ghanaians, 64%, want corrupt officials prosecuted, jailed, stolen funds retrieved, and named and shamed by government. In fact, when you look at the chart, you will see more of that. The question was direct, and we made a statement in terms of the type of naming and shaming that they will want. And the statement was that the stolen money that is retrieved is used to put up a public facility, and then the name of that corrupt official written on it, that this public facility was built with stolen money retrieved from so and so. And that is what most of Ghanaians went in for. Meaning that corruption has become a problem, and now they want people to have a history. Your generations will come and see that basic school there with your name written on it, that you stole money and it was retrieved from you. My interest is not in people going for that, but it tells me a lot about what people are thinking about corruption now. It has become a problem, a huge problem, for people to want generations to come and see their grandfathers being named as having stolen money. It tells a lot.